السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين، أما بعد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي، ثم أما بعد. First of all, I just want to welcome everyone who is currently on the live stream right now. This is going to be our first day together doing the Tajweed series. This is going to be a small Tajweed series where we're going to go over some basic rules as demonstrated in Imam al-Jamzuri's text Tuhfatul Atfal. So this is just day one. And to begin, Tuhfatul Atfal is basically a poem written by Imam al-Jamzuri, Imam Sulaiman al-Jamzuri, rahimahullah. He was a scholar of the Quran. He was an amazing reciter. He was known for compiling, different rules of tajweed and things of that nature. And so we're not going to go too much into detail about his life and his work, only because of the time constraint that we have. So we're just going to dive right into the material. The first bab, or we could say the first chapter of his poem or his book, you could say, is all about the rules of Nun Sakin and Tanween. So he begins the poem by saying, للنون إن تسكن وللتنوين أربع أحكام فخذ تبيني. And you can notice that, it is a poem, and, to make it easier for people to memorize and to understand, he made it so that, it rhymes and stuff and it sounds nice. So he begins للنون إن تسكن وللتنوين. So for noon, when there is a sukun on it, so noon sakin, or if there is a tanween, أربع أحكام فخذ تبيني. So Imam al-Jamzuri rahimahullah is telling us that there are 4 specific rules that take place whenever you see a noon sakin, or you see a fathatain, so the 2 fathas together, the 2 kasars together, or 2 dhammas together. We call this tanween. Right, so it makes the sound an, in, or un. So whenever we see noon sakin or a tanween, there are 4 rules that take place. So Imam al-Jamzuri rahimahullah is telling us to pay attention, and he's going to be sharing us, he's going to be telling us what the rules are. So the first rule that we're going to go over today, inshallah, is the rule of idhar. So idhar in Arabic, the literal translation means to make something clear, right? It comes from the root word dhahara, which means to make something clear. So he continues the poem and he says, فَالْأَوَّلُ الْإِظْهَارُ قَبْلَ أَحْرُفِ. And what we're going to understand why this specific rule is called idhar. So he continues the poem and he says, فَالْأَوَّلُ الْإِظْهَارُ قَبْلَ أَحْرُفِ لِلْحَلْقِ سِتٍ رُتِّبَتْ فَلْتَعْرِفِ. So the first rule of Nun Sakin and Tanween is known as idhar. So for idhar, he says there are 6 letters of the halq. Halq just refers to letters of the throat. That's all it means. It's basically a way of identifying and alluding to the 6 letters. So he's telling us that there are 6 letters of idhar. And whenever we see Nun Sakin or Tanween followed by any of these 6 letters, that's how we know that idhar is taking place. That's our key indication. Whenever we see these 6 letters followed by Nun Sakin or Tanween. And if we keep moving on, he continues the poem and he says, Hamzun faha'u ثم عين حاء مهملتان ثم غين خاء. So the first letter he tells us is Hamza. Hamza can just refer to, this symbol right here, which I have in my slides, or, it can refer to the letter Aleph itself, but, it's more commonly referred to as Hamza in terms of tajweed and in what the context of our discussion is today. The next letter is Ha, so the letter Ha. Thumma Ain, so then it's the letter Ain, then Ha, then Ghain and Kha. And Muhmalatani, he says it's the two letters without the dots, right? So we have these two pairs, Ain and Ghain, and then Ha and Kha, right? So he says, don't, the reason why he says Muhmalatan is so that you're able to differentiate between the two pairs. So the 6 letters of Idhar that we have are Hamza Ha, Ain Ha, and Ghain Kha. And, as I mentioned earlier, these letters are known as the letters of the halq. And it basically means that these letters are pronounced from the throat. And, if you pronounce it yourself, you would notice that it does come from the part of your throat. Hamza, ha, ayn, ha, ghayn, kha. It's from like the deeper part of your throat. And I do have some examples here listed. So for the first example we can see here is man amana, right? And we see this a lot of times in the Quran. One ayah is وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى, right? وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ. So here we have a noon sakin, right, followed by a hamza. And as we mentioned earlier, whenever we see a situation like this where we have either a noon sakin or any of the 3 variations of tanween, and we see one of the 6 letters of idhar followed after it, then we know that idhar is taking place here, and we have to pronounce the letters clearly, right? So we're not going to nasalize the sound, we're not going to elongate it in any way, we're just going to pronounce it as it is, right? So we're going to say man amana. Another example is وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى, right? The ayah from the 30th juz, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ, right? So the letter of idhar that we see here is the letter kha. And again, we see kha, and preceding it is noon sakin, so noon with the sukun on top. And because of that, we're not going to elongate it in any manner. We're not going to stretch it out. We're not going to nasalize it. We're just going to pronounce it as it is, right? So we're going to say وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ. And the other example that I have is فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. So the ayah from Surah At-Tin, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. So here, this is actually a little bit different than the examples we saw a bit earlier. This does not have a nun sakin, but rather it has an example of tanween, and in this case, it's the 2 dhamma, so dhammatain, right? And whenever key thing to keep in mind is whenever we have a rule where a tanween is involved, the tanween can be on any letter, it doesn't matter. So it can be on the surah, for example, in this situation, or it can be on a different letter like latifun khabir, right? So in that case, the tanween is on the fa, latifun khabir, right? So in this case, it's ajrun ghayru, right? So the key thing to keep in mind is tanween can be on any letter, right? And though the rule of idhar still implies, because right after it we see the letter ghain, which is one of the 6 letters of idhar. So what we're going to do is we're going to pronounce it as it is, and we're not going to stretch it out in any way, or we're not going to nasalize it either. So we're just going to read it as we see it, and we're going to make the pronunciation very clear. فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. So we have this rule of idhar that we just went over, and inshallah, next week we're going to move on and we're going to talk about the two different types of idgham, and we'll move on and try to get through the rest of the rules of Nun second tanween. Because this was the first day, I did want to start off light. One key action item that I do want to share is that inshallah, like as we go through this, one of the best ways to implement any rules of tajweed that we learn is to utilize it in our recitation. So, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us another opportunity to witness Ramadan. And, this is a moment where we really have to take advantage of this opportunity that we've been given. And one of the best ways we can do that is upholding the sanctity of the Quran, right? Because we know that Ramadan is the month of the Quran, and what better way to honor the Quran than to recite it every single day, right? And it doesn't really matter how much you recite. We all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala values quality over quantity anyway, right? So what matters more is reciting the Quran as best as you can with proper pronunciation, and by implementing the rules of tajweed that we're going to be learning in this series. So one of the best ways that you can practice idhar is by trying to identify it whenever you come across it as you're reciting, right? So for example, if you're reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, right, if you're starting from the beginning, just go through each and every verse, right? And you will notice that there is an example of idhar in I think the second last ayah. So صراط الذين oh no, it's actually in the last ayah. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, right? So there's a noon second, and then it's followed by one of the six letters of idhar, ayn, أنعمت عليهم, right? And just keep going through your recitation, try to find examples of idhar, so that not only are you actually applying what you're learning, but at the same time you're going to have a better understanding about why you're reciting certain words and certain letters in a specific way. So with that, I'll conclude. um, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst those who recite his Quran and give it its true rights, recite it properly. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst those who recite it often and establish a strong relationship with the Quran. And I also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst those who are accepted into Jannah and who have all of their sins washed away in this blessed month. قولوا قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر